लाइव में 2 hours क्यों आ रहा? What? Why are people talking already? So annoying. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, we are live now on YouTube. Yeah, hey Aditya, hey Gaurav, how are you?
Hello.
We are on live right now. Hi everyone, hope you're all doing great. Thank you all for joining in. Yeah, thank you Anurag. Thank you Aditya. So we have a very exciting session planned for you, all of you. So we'll start in another 3 or 4 minutes. So if you have anything to ask before that or any questions that you would like us to answer or like us to help you with before we start, let us know. We have done some cool things. So whenever we will be in a waiting state, you will be able to see this
Mm-hmm.
GIF. And
Yep.
so right now you'll see this GIF because we don't have anything to share right now. We'll start in a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes. Hey, hi Srinivas. Thank you so much. We'll be starting another 3 or 4 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, please let us know. We'll be happy to help you out.
Hi, Srinivas.
Today's session will be about designing for EdTech. So EdTech is a very booming industry right now, and a lot of people are kind of getting into EdTech. So we wanted to share how you can learn from Saloni's experiences of designing in EdTech in companies like Graphy, Tactopus, and now she's working at Toppr. So these are some of the experiences that she will be sharing, and we hope that you have some takeaways from this session and you are able to learn things from her and generally about design. So that is what today's session is about. All right. I see some people joining in. So if you know someone who would like to join in, please let them know as well. Share it on whatever social platform you are on, and so that more people get to learn about this, more people get to know about what you are doing here. Cool. I think a few people have already joined in, so we
Yep.
can we can start.
All right.
So yeah, I'll just give both of our introductions. Saloni will give her introduction, obviously. But hey everyone, my name is Karan Kapoor and I'm a product designer right now, working at Obvious. And these are a bunch of streams that I've been planning to do so that we are able to help people in the right direction. And the first topic that we have chosen is EdTech. So EdTech is a fairly large industry right now, and a lot of people are joining it as well as designers and in other fields as well. So we wanted to give you some perspective from Saloni about how her experiences have been for designing for EdTech. So I have with me Saloni. So she works at Toppr as a product designer and is a NIF alumna. And yeah, that's all I would say about her right now. and I'll give it to her to introduce herself. Yeah, go on, Saloni.
Yeah. Thank you, Karan, for the lovely introduction. And I'm really excited for this talk. I have been following Karan for a while, and after like seeing other people's live and coming here to speak it sounds exciting as well. So I would share my screen now. Let me know if you see it, Karan.
Yeah, just a second. Just let us go to the waiting state.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, yeah, I think your screen is visible to everyone now, but I don't think you are visible. Yeah, it's visible now.
All good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining on a Saturday night. Wasn't really expecting people would turn up, but feels good to see the chat and everyone talking. So, let's talk about designing for Edtech through play and learn. Before I start, I just want to tell that I'm not here to give any framework or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about my personal experiences and take you through my projects. And I hope we do have fun while doing this session and have something to take away with us by end of it. So for those who are meeting me for the first time online, I am Saloni. I'm a product designer at Toppr, as Karan had already mentioned. But if I'm not designing, you can find me drawing weird aliens. And I was not kidding about it in my bio, but I really like to draw absurd things, mainly because I can't do anatomy and I'm really bad at drawing things in perspective. But as it is clearly seen, color plays a huge role in my life, and I like to get engrossed in the parallel reality and make these things. So I also like to sell my work and exhibit at few places. It used to happen in non-COVID world, but basically because I love talking to people, connecting to them, and getting to know their interpretations about my work. So a lot of people ask me, what do I really do? And I think this is the challenge of every product designer ever. How do we really explain what we do for a living? So I'll take an example of an app. Just I think many people do this as well. But for now, I'm going to explain you what I do through GPay. Google Pay is what most of us use daily, and once we make a payment, we do see this screen where we get scratch cards rewards. So on the right hand side is this reward which you see, which has rupees 5, rupees cashback, which rarely people get, but I've been lucky this time. And here is when you, before scratching the card, what interaction you have to do. So I would say the right hand side thing would be something which a user interface designer would do. He visually designs the entire screen, shows you that he would have decided that rupees 5 is important here, writing cashback is an important information for the person, and adding this icon and bottom shade button at the end. So these things are done by the user interface designer. While on my left hand side, you can see this interaction where they have made it familiar to the real experience of scratching a scratch card. So that is done by the experience designer who thinks what kind of delightful experience would we like to give the user. So as a product designer, I at times do both the things or at times one, but I decide what kind of digital experience would the user go through, especially in the educational domain. So today we are going to talk about education, which has been a topic which has been very close to my heart since the longest time, and I was meaning to talk about it. So the world shifted to the screen because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and everyone has been tired listening to this line, including me. The education system went through some fortunate and unfortunate changes. Fortunate because I got to work with three companies ever since the lockdown has been hit. I like that they are working towards making education accessible. One was Graphy. I did my internships at Graphy by an academy and my graduation project with Tactopus. And I call it unfortunate because many people are still devoided by education because they don't have enough resources. But I feel technology would definitely give much added benefit. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to discuss what display mean, my journey in designing for this niche, how to build empathy for children, and the role of designing and shaping education. So I wouldn't do enough justice to this talk if I don't do any fun thing or fun activity. So I want you all to do little something for me. What does play mean to you? You have to express that in the comment section using an emoticon. It could be any emoticon you resonate with the most. So let's just see what all emoticons you can come up with. You have to describe what play means to you. Karan, you can also, yeah, one or more emojis also work, right?
Yeah,
You can
I'll just
also,
I'll just contribute to it.
so
So
that everyone could understand. Just use any emojis which describe play for you. Okay, that's an interesting emoji. I haven't seen it.
it's the fencing emoji.
Okay, that's great. So I see a lot of you all using things related to games and everything. So basketball or painting, yeah, that's also good. So my emojis are just, I don't know, it gives me a Pac-Man kind of vibes. This emoji I use after pulling back pranks with my friends and family members, dancing and baking, because these are the things which I like doing. So before getting into researching about play, I used to think play is basically me in a room filled with colorful objects, or a place like Disney Park, or games quite literally, like Fortnite, Among Us, and whatnot. But after researching and learning about play, I realized that play is a pleasurable activity taken for no apparent reason, and it doesn't really always need to be uh, related to games. So I came across this interesting approach by Dr. Stuart Brown, who is the founder of National Institute of Play. He very beautifully puts it that the ability to play is critical not only to be happy, but also to have a self-sustaining social relationship and be creative and innovative person. At this point, I realized how vital it is for me to also practice play in my life. You can read about him and see his TED talk, but overall, I think that we have been so engrossed in our lives and we try to have more productive outcome these days that we forget to do things which have no purpose. And I would like to show you a few images which shows that how much attached we were since childhood to play. So spectator play is basically when a child learns by watching his siblings or parents playing. Imaginative solo play is when the child creates his own world and the stories and learns to play through that. Rough tumble play is something which is around us. Animals do that all the time, or in games, boxing, kabaddi, we do that. And social play is all of us used to go to play every evening, I'm sure, and used to be back by 7. So, what I don't like about these images is the absence or the lack of adults. It's because I think, as I mentioned, that we forget that as adults, we can include play in our life as well. We just look at play as an opposite of work, but what Stuart Brown says that work is an opposite of depression. And without it, our lives just would be boring and colorless. So I just wanted to touch base on this that play is important in our lives as well before we dive into the education aspect. So I want you guys to think about how am I practicing play in my life? For me, it is watching movie nights and playing games with my friends every weekend or doing these fun sessions at Toppers workplace every Friday. So you might be doing it consciously or subconsciously, but it's very important to include play in your life. You can tell me about it, you can DM me later or anything, but I'm just curious that how people are practicing play in the times of pandemic, especially when our professional and personal lives are intertwined. So that is all about play. Now let's just talk about how did I get into designing for kids. So we have to rewind a bit. 5 years ago, I was just preparing for getting into design schools, and I had this exhibition where I made a poster for designing for women's safety. And at that time, I came up with this interesting quote: creeps come in all shapes and sizes. Soon enough, that thought stayed with me, and after 2 years, in my second year of NIFT, I did this Instagram series where I created 36 days of type. Basically, you design one letter every day on Instagram, and my theme for that was 36 ways to deal with creeps. So, what I ended up creating is a toolkit for kids to teach them about sexual predator behavior and give them sexual education knowledge, basically. So, these are the cards: ask them to stop, block them, call them out, ways they could deal with creeps, and few words they could use to describe any activity which happens to them. So, these are all educational flashcards, but because my style is more aligned towards kids, it looks kind of fun and something like that. So what is the end outcome? The end outcome was Creepo Alert Book. By the way, I'm showing this for the first time publicly. I never got enough guts to actually put it um, online, but because it is unfinished project, I PDF file. One sec. So I'll give you a glimpse of the project here. It's a book, unfinished book, as I said. Like very evil. What is creepy exactly? Types of creeps. So what I did is I took inspiration from this dating profiles and then I converted into these types of creeps you'll meet in your daily life. So as I said, creeps come in all shapes and sizes and they're everywhere. They could be in your workplace, on social media, or on in your rickshaw. So creeps on wheels was something like that. Create a travel story adjusting mirrors while driving on empty roads. Damsel who puts in stress. So I'm not saying that only men are creeps. I wanted to also throw light on there is no gender bias in this, and anyone who makes you uncomfortable is creep at the end of the day. So I didn't want to profile them specifically, but I wanted to basically make them aware and show them that you need to develop an instinct where you understand that if it's making you comfortable, whoever it is, it's not done. So that is why your turn and how will you deal with it was there. So now I also spoke about how not to be a creep, and in general, I did this long research. So moving ahead from that topic, what I learned from this. So here comes my first insight. So while you design for children, the lines between sympathy and empathy often become blur. Look at the end users and think practically. Avoid emotionally getting invested in projects. So this has personally happened with me because I read around 126 surveys where people spoke about their traumatic experiences and stuff, and it became so heavy for me mentally that I thought that it was my responsibility to bring this book out there and make it come to life. But I realized that at times we can't achieve everything we want, and you shouldn't have any design bias by just thinking that बच्चे भगवान की देन होते or something like that. So think of them as users at the end of the day. So I think that helps you somewhere to build your own projects when you look at the personas as well. The second project I wanted to talk about is my side hustle project, that is Type Tales. So in Type Tales, me along with my friends, we created this website in which we taught about social and emotional learning for kids with special needs. We did a very rigorous research of 16 weeks in the pandemic and did this live project with Special Olympics Bharat, which is a Paralympics for kids with intellectual disabilities. So you can check out this website, typetales.com. It's live and we have very fun things on it. We are basically teaching kids about transitions because they lack that thing in the sense that they don't understand so emotions and things as empathy, etc. So we are doing that very visually through stories. So you can check that out. I wouldn't go in depth of that project because that would require me taking another session with Karan. But I wanted to just highlight on this topic that how vital it is to design for system. When you are designing for a kid, you just can't design for that one persona. Parents and guardians or caretakers often come as a package because the kids are not the decision makers in their life, right? So you have to think about you need to think about what factors could influence the behavior of the kid. So while doing type tales, we looked at parent, sibling, house help, physiotherapist, occupational therapist, and special educator, personal mentor, and even the government schemes. This is something we call as stakeholder map. You look at the system and also speak to other people who might influence the behavior. So you would say, how is this adding benefit to me as a product designer who designs app? So this is a few screen grabs from YouTube and Lingos. So in YouTube Kids, you have this option in the onboarding where you have a child profile and a parent profile. So parent has more control over features of what the child could see. So here's one example of looking at it that the parent is also stakeholder in this entire thing. So that is why you design for them as well. And the lingos is like how much should your child play, giving them this control and designing for them. If we wouldn't have thought about that parents are also part of this system, then we wouldn't have come up with something like this. So now I would like to talk about my third project with Graphy by an academy. It was an app at that point of time. But it was a very interesting project, and their unique selling proposition USP was structured mobile first content for casual learning. I didn't work for children here. I worked for 25, 21 to 35-year-olds having learning mindset who stay in a very metropolitan city. So Graphy made me look at education without any age bar, a realization how adding a hint of fun by gamifying learning can make it easier for anyone to understand. So I was designing for slightly elder age group. I was used to designing for K-12, that is kindergarten to 12th. But I designed this hypothetical project, which was gamifying waiting before a creator goes live on Graphy. So why were we doing that? So what happens is like we went live, there was some waiting time for you, right? So usually people lose interest. Think of it as you going to a sari shop, and by the time the sari wale bhaiya are getting the saris, you're waiting there and you're observing people around you. But to do this in a digital setting, there are so many distractions for the user, every other notification trying to grab their attention. How can you entice their experience and make them wait without making them feel that they're wasting their time? So we wanted to make it in fun, engaging manner. I had to deep dive into my experiences when I really liked waiting for something. So Microsoft Windows, Doordarshan trailer, or the classic DVD, which used to bounce from the edge of the screen, was the inspiration here. What we ended up making, me and the designers at Graphy, was this. So you basically join the live stream, you read about the stream, what is it about, what the creator is going to talk about. Once you are in the waiting game, you enter the waiting room basically. And the game is simple. You just have to hold the G for the longer time. And as soon as it's done, there's a confetti drop. The challenge here is to leave your hand at the right moment. So it's a very mindless game, right? And it's not something we have thought of like intensely about, but it's fun. It makes you help you kill time and it has some interaction. It makes the users feel that they are engaging with their product. So Graphy try to make it fun for even adults, and that is what other apps are also doing. If you look at Bumble, who introduce ice-breaking activities, people are very anxious and nervous when they go on Bumble for the first time. So they have introduced few sets of games. Headspace, again, another place where people are anxious, frustrated. It helps them to calm down. The entire playful approach is very interesting for them. And I would like to also mention Divyanshu's feature, which when he was there, he worked with the Denso team, that they made waiting at Denso very interesting. They added an Indian context to it. So I'm not saying every time you need to give rewards, badges, and everything to the user to make them feel that they are having a playful time. I think Denso does it really well, even in their marketing, their product design, and overall, where their tone, their entire visual identity till their product design has very fun vibe to it, and we enjoy it, right? So that is what I wanted to talk about, adding play in your product design, regardless the age group you work for. Think of play not just limited to children. And you, because at the end, the users are just learning some or the other feature. So it's not just education, they're learning to use any new feature, they're learning about a new topic you have introduced. So just try to simplify it and make fun for them and reduce their cognitive load. So now I cannot talk about my graduation project much, but I worked with Tactopus. They created games for kids with developmental delays, and I worked for the digital product at that point of time. And soon enough, so what I made was a progress tracking app to help parents and educators track the progress of their child. So for kids with developmental delays, it's not a black and white world. There are also gray areas. They take time to progress. So how would we show that was the idea. So as soon as I finished my graduation project, I transitioned to Toppr. And I realized there are very few things which are similar. Let's call it the Lego components, as I have named here. So if you're designing for a live educational app which involves interaction with the child, so there are like few things which are always there, regardless the product you're working for. Before the class, in class, post class, and learning management system. Don't get confused, I'll explain it to you. So, before a class is basically when you join the class, you would like to show the child the details about the class, any information you need them to be prepared about. In class is the video experience when you join the class on Zoom. So, they might have their own video software, right? So how can you simplify it for them and make it more easier for them to use? Post class would involve quizzes, homeworks, assignments. So setting and tracking goals, assignment and homeworks, online video classes, attendance, student and educator profile is something learning management system have introduced. So it's like more in control of the organization or the teacher. Search query of solutions and reward systems. So these are just few components or patterns I have identified working for educational startups are always there. These things are going to stay. You just design it for the way you would do for your brand. So look at it as Lego components and you're building your own house. You just have to make sure that your house is unique and it talks about what you really want to talk about. One thing I learned at Toppr is you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. You just need to make it unique and make it more accessible for them, which is more suitable for the brand. So it's okay that you can't invent or innovate every time you're designing for something. You can take inspiration from others, but make sure to have your originality at the end of it. So my last topic, which I want to talk about, is how to build empathy for children. So these are just few things I have learned over time, doing research, talking to 60 plus special educators, parents, that you need to look at your users beyond personas, especially children. Spend time with them, conversing with them, and collecting artifacts. This could help you to read between the lines. I love designing for children because they're always around you. I don't need to find them specifically. If not in my neighborhood, you would have some child in your family at least, दूर के रिश्तेदार or anyone. So artifacts is basically taking the information about like their real life photos or things like that, which will help you in your research. So while I was researching for the progress tracking for Tactopus, I took I asked the educators to send me how are they currently doing it, because when the entire educational system went online, they are basically transitioning from the physical to online world. So don't forget that they are going to basically adapt to some new kind of experience completely. So, can you hear me, Karan? Mhm. Yeah. So that is what I wanted to talk about. Next is be eager to learn and unlearn the ways you look at education system. Don't be stubborn about replicating traditional schooling methods in digital products. So this insight comes from this talk I had with a special educator. She was talking about how much she enjoyed giving physical rewards to the kids. It would be drawing a smiley on their hand or stickers or blowing bubbles, and she really misses it in the digital interaction. So tell me one thing, can you really replicate the same kind of experience by showing a blowing bubble animation or a star just expanding on the screen? Maybe, maybe not. But because that is something which was more tangible and personal to them. So you don't have to always replicate what is happening in the physical world. We are talking about a digital remote experience, so we can provide them something completely new. So this was another insight. Lastly, simplify communication, speak the lingo familiar to the child, stay quirky and fun, even with your copywriting. So be it you designing for uh, like early graders or people who are studying in universities, make sure to not use any jargons. Designing for children for education is basically simplifying language and giving them direct things. It's not just about increasing the corner radius or using fat fonts and primary colors to make the interface beautiful. So, this is what I think. And lastly, I wanted to touch upon the role of design in shaping education. So, be it any kid who wasn't able to who had like a low self-esteem because she wasn't able to speak English, or the kid who had learning differences and suffered from understanding basic concepts, or the girl who couldn't find anyone to teach her about good touch or bad touch. These are not just Bollywood stories, but stories of people around us. And exclusion is happening constantly, and children are from a basic necessity as education. So we as designers need to keep in mind that whatever we are designing, we need to be mindful and considerate about the use case, because learning for every student is different. we need to make sure that we are just not designing for a very generic age group or use cases. We need to also consider different kinds of extremes in the entire spectrum. So, EdTech might be the current wave in India, as many people see. But I definitely don't think working to make education accessible and inclusive a trend. This should be fundamentally practiced by us humans to provide better opportunities for our generations ahead. So, this was the closing thought on my talk. And thank you so much for listening. Whatever questions you have, you can ask me, follow me on Twitter, message me yourself. But yeah, that's all.
That's great. Yeah, I think it was a great presentation, and not only presentation, but how you transitioned from designing comic books and then being a product designer for edtech platforms, and especially
Yeah,
focusing on what children do and what are their backgrounds and how can you design for them better. So yeah, I think it was a amazing presentation,
thank
but
you.
let's see how people what questions people have asked. So if you want, you can stop sharing your screen.
Stop sharing.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Just got lost. I think I have had those panel. Oops. How do we do that, Karen?
It's just go back to Zoom and you can do that.
Hmm, not. Basically, the panel is. Can you stop sharing the screen? Can you do that?
I can't from your end.
Can you help me out? How do I stop sharing?
Yeah, it's done.
Yep, done. Cool.
Sorry for the
Alright.
wait, everyone.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but I think the GIF makes up for the wait.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, great presentation. I really like. So these are origin stories. Okay. So think of these sessions as origin stories. So this was Spider-Man, which came out in 2000. So we'll do other Spider-Mans with other people. So Spider-Man has been doing a lot of origin stories. So think of these as origin stories. But yeah, this was a great insight on how you got started and what shaped you from your college days into what you're doing right now. So there are a
Yeah.
few questions. If you can pick them up, then
Alright.
it would be great. So this is, let me see which one came first. So one question by Arnav is, how do you make the children or your audience stick to the edtech platform or the product, since you are designing for children and they don't have a very large attention span. So how do you tackle that, or how do you go about it?
That's a very interesting question. I think it's just not the kids, even because of Instagram algorithms, like
Hmm.
how Instagram is reducing our attention span, it has become like that.
Yeah.
So I feel that adding playfulness and fun to it, of course, acts as a vitamin, but it is not going to solve the problem. If your product is not solving the problem of the user, you need to deep dive into your user research, and
Hmm.
it would help to make it better, I would say. But play is not solving the problem which your product is lacking in general. So that's one thing. And I
Yes.
think you can make your users stay. I mean, in what context did he say it?
Got it. So another question, this is a question that I have. So you mentioned that you created these waiting states. So how difficult is it to create some waiting states for children? Because they already have such low, not low attention spans,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
they are
yeah.
not used to these screens. So how do
Right.
you do that?
Extremely difficult. It was a very long project, and I was studying about gamification, reading a lot of articles about it. A
Hmm.
good point here would be to add interaction
Hmm.
and make them part of it as well. Like they may look at the GIF and find it interesting for once, but after twice or thrice, they'll
Hmm.
get bored with it because they're like,
Yeah,
"इसमें कुछ नया दिखाओ." So you need to add a kind of surprise to it, and feedback loops work. So for Graphy's waiting game, you had to click on the logo and then there was a confetti drop.
yeah,
So they understood. So this is something which can work for the waiting states at least.
got it, got it.
Yeah.
There's another question. It's by Gaurav. So he's asking that like a lot of people are coming on these edtech platforms. So how do you ensure that, but the goals of company after a point become to get more money. So how do you balance between that, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, I think you like the company's organization goals or sales goals are you can't change it as a designer. You
Yeah,
can try to be more ethical, considerate from your side. As I
hmm,
said, giving example of my suction project, right?
right.
You it feels like you're going to change the world through design and everything. But I just read this tweet that maximum what you could do is not create things which would be harmful for the world.
Yeah,
So as a designer, you shouldn't be using dark patterns and all of these things in the platform. Money
right,
making and everything is the organization's perspective. So if uh, you don't agree with it, then you should take decision whatever is suitable for you.
right. I also think that a lot of it is not about design, because a lot of it is about how you reach to people. Or
Yeah,
so you must have seen these traditional institutes, right? So they don't have the best of facilities in their tuitions, and but they provide good content. So the
right.
issue with them is that they are not able to reach a lot of people. But these
Mm-hmm.
platforms have the power with tech and with these sales and marketing channels, that they are able to reach a lot of people. So I think there
Yeah,
has to be a fine balance. And if you don't like some organizations work, then probably not aspire to work
work for
there.
them. Yeah,
So yeah, I think that clears your question. Let me look at some other questions that we have.
yeah.
So Yatika has the same question, that how do you make a younger audience engage and not make them make them feel distracted? So I think through
Yeah.
interaction, as you mentioned, or
Make everything bigger because
uh,
we are used to designing for our age group and everything is like 40 pixel bounding box and everything
hmm,
like that. So you can check this with your parents as well. Like people who also have like low vision problems, so show that design to them. And I think my mom is my best judge whenever I have any design. I just show it to her and she's like, I can't read this. What have you
hmm,
made? So think about it, like if how visible it is, readability and things like that come into mind, make it playful, but at the same time also take care of the color contrast. Because some colors might just be very triggering for certain kids. Like
hmm,
yellow is for a lot of them sharp objects. So you need to consider things like that. But yeah,
great. And
making it engaging is important.
yeah, as you mentioned, make things bigger. So if you might have observed people, so not people but kids, how they use tabs and how they use mobile phones is like this. So they just tap on things. Right,
Uh-huh.
right.
Yeah,
So you don't want that 40 pixel tappable area to bug them every time they are trying to do something. So they also
right.
are trying to achieve something, right?
Yep.
So I would, yeah, that's a good point, that make everything bigger for them, make everything more colorful, but think of accessibility in terms of colors and what triggers them, what that will not trigger them. So yeah, that's how you can make them wait.
Yep.
There's another question. So this is by Vikas. These days, the competitive environment is taking a toll on education for kids and parents. There are multiple ads that post I mean, teach your kid coding. How do you balance this? So I don't understand this question. So if you did, can you please take it up? It's by Vikas.
I think he's talking about the advertisements of certain companies and how
Yeah.
they're portraying about things.
Mhm.
So, competitiveness is always going to be there. I think it's not just limited to education,
Yeah.
but every other brand is competing with each other and trying to grab the attention of it.
Hmm.
So, that is something which we can't help. But if we are like a good educational brand which wants to provide good content to the user at the end of the day,
Mhm.
then we can be more mindful with our overall advertising and make sure that we are not raising any unexpected ambitions or like your kid would be Einstein after taking this course. We need to be very realistic about our approach. So that is
Got it.
how I think from marketing side of you can think about it.
Got it. Got it. So there's another question by Pawan. He is asking that how do you empathize with learners, say who are in the who are 21-year-old, and how do you empathize with someone who's in the age bracket of 40-year-old?
Okay, wow, that's interesting. I think one point which I spoke about is speak in their lingo. So, talking to boomers, as the word was trending a while ago on the chat, uh, talking to boomers is difficult because it's like equal to talking to our parents, and then we have a very different way of conversing with each other. So, I think empathizing with our generation is much easier, but you need to build that connect. So, whenever I used to speak to educators and parents, I used to talk to them like they're my own relatives. Like I can't use like fancy English terms. I used to speak and try to understand the story more. So ask them about their day, how their child is doing, and things like that. So you will treat it as a conversation. I remember in one of the interviews, I was just acting as if I was checking some contextual interview checklist which I had. Like, okay, I've done asking demographic questions, I'm done asking this. Shouldn't talk like that. You're building a conversation, engage with them, and talk to them as you would talk to any of your relative, as I said. It
Yeah.
would help.
I think a lot of it comes down to how you empathize with people. I know
Yeah,
it's a very overused term, but I think the more you do that, more you think of the scenarios, more you think of the conditions they'll be using your product in, because your product is not the only product they are using.
yeah.
So that can really help. There's People are trying to brew some controversy in the chat. Please, please don't do that. Okay.
Want this
So,
video to be banned.
so there's a question, interesting question by Sunal. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's how you pronounce his name. He's asking that
Sonal.
which,
Yeah.
what other niche would you like to explore other than EdTech?
I am very excited to find answers for it myself. But I think I was interested in gaming at one point because I'm interested in play, and then I thought gaming is still a different thing, and I'm excited about it. But I can also think fintech is something which excites me. So
Got it. Great, great, great. Yeah. So there's another question by Gaurav. He's asking, how do you design products for EdTech so that products can be less addictive, so that the screen time is not a lot for the children?
yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question, Gaurav. So I remember that in one of the graduation project, I had added. So it was a version for educator, and they had their timetable that you have this class now, you have this class. So there was also a state where there are no slots scheduled. So in the
Hmm.
copywriting, I had worked upon it's time for you to take a rest. So make sure you're staying away from the screen or something like that. So giving them a message that you also need to take breaks from what you're doing. So we can do that with apps. And if you want to start with a very basic thing, it would be copywriting, I would say, to alert them. Notifications could also be like a good thing that you have spent 8 hours on this app. Would you like
Yeah.
to take a sip of water? So something like this.
So do you think when you say take a sip of water, you can add that Jal lijiye gif, or you can't? Okay. Okay. I think there are not more questions coming in. So
Yeah,
I guess people, if you have any questions, please let us know. And
yeah,
do
sure.
follow Saloni on Instagram and also on Twitter. So I'll
Yeah,
just
my
drop.
Instagram handle is Saloni Quietly Gilliam. Just wanted to say that once out loud.
That's a very interesting Instagram handle. I don't know how you must have come up with it.
Yeah.
I think the links are all jumbled. I'll have to send them one by one.
Oh my God. Yeah, but guys, if you have any, sorry, folks, if you have any questions, then you can reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to answer and know your ways of practicing play in your life.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, if you don't have any questions,
I think there's a question, but they just,
okay, you can take that up.
when you say that you include and indulge the users in what would at some point get attached to that gamification more. They can get attached to that gamification
Hmm.
for sure. But I think it's fine if just happening for 5 minutes because we have a
Hmm.
timer at the top and the live stream is going to get started by it. So it's not like the live streaming is starting and the users are just busy playing the game. That should be a very bad feature design.
Yeah, that I think this also, like you mentioned that the live stream is starting in 5 minutes. So this can relate back to when we were in school and our classes used to start and we still used to be outside in the lunch break, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there was a bell that used to ring. So I think ringing that bell inside the app
Hmm.
that could provide a more physical experience also.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. There are more questions coming in. So if you can read them, can you pick them up?
Yup. Divyanshu is saying, what do you think is the future of EdTech? Uh, I can't predict like futures 5 years ahead because the times we are living in, it's so unpredictable. We never know when the other lockdown comes in. But what I think so that we are not going back to physical schools, just physical schools for sure. We are going to be more in touch with a hybrid model because people have understood that we can learn and manage our time very well when we are in the remote learning space. But I think technology is just not going to solve for it because we do lack the connection, meeting people, meeting your school friends, eating tiffin with them, and all sorts of these things. So
Hmm.
a hybrid model would be a foreseeable future. I think so.
Got it. Okay. So there's another question by Vishant. He's asking, how do you design elements in a product for an adult versus for the children?
I think the visual identity has a lot to do with this difference. If you look at Upgrad, if you look at more like early school graders apps. Like Byju's also has a lot of distinction between their products when they go in early graders and then when they design for it. But yeah, it's more on visual identity, the kind of sophistication, how much play are you adding?
Hmm.
Just as we were talking about how bigger the interface is, I guess the smaller it gets, it's
Yeah,
for a bigger audience.
right.
So yeah,
Got it. Okay. I think there
yeah,
are not more questions. So
people are leaking internal information now. So I think it is good.
yeah.
Athmay is asking what does UX process looks like. UX process is quite invisible. It doesn't
Hmm.
look basically like that's what I was showing with the GP example at start. It's more of an experience you plan for them, and this involves a lot of researching, talking to users, taking insights, and all the things which happens backstage. And
Right.
what all you see is interface. So my UX process goes from talking to the users, understanding them, getting the insights, and then coming to a common point between the business and what the product wants, and also advocating for the users.
Got it. There are a few more questions coming in.
Okay. Users judge on the basis of the language. So using simple and easy to understand language over the older website is safer choice as ultimate reason to be understandable. I think simple language should be used by everyone, and we
Hmm.
should just ban jargons altogether because we are trying to make the entire experience more easy for the people to understand. So this really helps to make it accessible for everyone.
Got it.
Yeah, I think that's most of the questions.
Okay. Yeah, I think those are all the questions. If there is any other question, we can take it offline or we can take it somewhere on Twitter
Yeah,
or Instagram. But yeah, this was all that we had from this stream. Thank you everyone for joining in.
thank you for joining. And
And
do
huh?
tell me what you like about this. Do talk about us, share about this, and subscribe to Karan. I just
Yeah,
wanted to say that.
yeah, that if they don't do it, they'll not be able to enter the next time. I'm just kidding. So yeah,
Yeah,
just subscribe and we all the links are up in the chat where you can connect with me and Saloni. So
yeah,
Saloni is at Saloni quietly brilliant, and I am at Karan Kapoor UX on Instagram, and
yeah.
she's at Saloni Mhapsekar, and I'm at Karan Kapoor on Twitter. So go ahead, connect with us. We'll
Yeah.
be happy to take your questions and answer
Yeah.
them.
Thank you so much for joining.
Cool. Thank you all. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye bye. Please. Stopped.